Chapter 161, Who's First? Chapter 161, Who's First? It would be a wonder if he could sell it. In terms of companion beasts, we are indeed not as strong as him. Unfortunately, Restriction City doesn't allow the use of companion beasts. Who needs his strategy? Li Zuo pursed his lips as he watched Zhou Wen leave. The girl beside him added, he thinks he's very strong just because he defeated John, but it was all because of his companion beasts. To write a strategy guide and sell it to our special class is indeed excessively arrogant. Let's not talk about the geniuses like Jing, Wang Lu, or Feng Qian in our special class, even the average ones are far superior to the students of the ordinary classes. If he wants to write a strategy guide, it will be us writing for them. The few special admission students shared the same thought. They still felt a little displeased that Zhou Wen had tried selling them the strategy guide. It had hurt their pride. Wang Lu frowned slightly and said, Zhou Wen is indeed a genius. The guide he wrote must have something to learn from. However, we aren't buying it because we want to train ourselves, so there's no need to belittle him. Li Zuo laughed and said, Wang Lu, you are overthinking things. We have no intention of disparaging him. We are just saying that no one is weaker than him in terms of their own abilities. There's no need to buy his strategy. Wang Lu could tell that Li Zuo was insincere, but she didn't say anything else. The few of them headed for class together. The mission to slay the bronze luck beasts had been completed, so Lu Zhenyan was to provide them a summary and explanation. All the special admission students had to attend the class. Lu Zhenyan was in a good mood today. He didn't blame Feng Qian or another student for being late. He only waved his hand to get them to quickly take their seats. Mr. Lu seems to be in a good mood today. He didn't reprimand the late students. A girl said in surprise. Shaking his head, Li Zuo said with a smile, of course he's in a good mood. Our special class did a good job with the homework mission. I heard that a few of us broke the special class record from last year. Seems like we can relax for a while. The girl from before smiled. Lu Zhenyan raised his hand slightly to signal for the students to quieten down. Then, he swept his gaze across everyone's faces and said slowly, everyone has completed the homework mission of killing bronze luck beasts. Compared to the special classes of past years, the overall standard of this class is a level higher. It can be considered the best result in recent years. The students started clapping. Many students showed their excitement. Having been in school for more than a month, this was the first time they heard Lu Zhenyan praise them. Lu Zhenyan waved his hand and waited for the students to quieten down before continuing. This year, a few students performed pretty well. They broke the records from previous years. Jing with 320. Wang Lu with 327 and Feng Qian with 328. Such results can be said to be extremely outstanding. The other students looked at the three of them enviously. Although they had already known that the three of them were exceptionally outstanding even in the special class, they couldn't help but feel jealous. But Lu Zhenyan suddenly changed the topic and continued, but this year's best result wasn't scored by any of them. How is that possible? Who else could it be? Is there anyone else in our class who has better results than them? It can't be, right? There are hidden big shots that are more impressive than the three of them. That's impossible, isn't it? Jing, Wang Lu, and Feng Qian are among the top 10 students in the school. Even if the other students are very strong, they aren't good enough to enter the top 10. It seems impossible for anyone to have better results than the three of them. The students engaged in a flurry of discussion. They looked around and wondered who that person was. The person who obtained the best results in killing the bronze luck beast this year isn't from our special class. The students' discussion became even more intense after Lu Zhenyan said those shocking words. Mr. Lu, don't tell me you're talking about our seniors. Li Zuo couldn't help but ask loudly. Lu Zhenyan smiled and looked at Li Zuo. He asked, Li Zuo, who do you think should be first and what's his timing? I think it should be Senior Wei Ji. I believe that if it were Senior Wei Ji, he should be able to do it in sub 3 minutes, said Li Zuo. That's right. Wei Ji got 257. It happens to be within 3 minutes. You are very keen, Lu Zhenyan said. Li Zuo said proudly, Mr. Li, you flatter me. I was just making a casual guess. I didn't expect to be on the mark. Lu Zhenyan smiled. But that's Wei Ji's results when he was practicing. Besides, he's already in his third year, so he's not within the rankings of you freshmen. The freshman in first place is someone else. Who is it? Li Zuo couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Lu Zhenyan picked up a dossier and said, the results for this year's killing of bronze luck beasts puts Zhou Wen from Counselor Wang Fei's class as first. Second is Li Xuan from her class as well. Third place is our classes in Jing. Impossible. Li Zuo cried out in disbelief. This time it wasn't just Li Zuo and the other students. Even Jing, Wang Lu, and Feng Kaiwian's eyes narrowed as they looked at Lu Zhenyan. What's Zhou Wen's timing? Jing suddenly asked. That's a good question. You can guess what their results are, Lu Zhenyan said with a smile. It's at best an order of magnitude from Jing, right? Suggested Li Zuo. It's indeed an order of magnitude. Lu Zhenyan turned on the player and projector and played a video. See for yourself. Everyone cast their gaze to the big screen. And Jing, Feng Qian, and the others also had their eyes peeled to the screen as they watched the video carefully. The video was very short and only took less than a minute. However, after watching the video, the entire classroom fell silent. Li Zuo and the others broke out into a cold sweat as they stared intently at the big screen. They failed to regain their cognitive abilities for a long time and their faces were blank. Coach lives up to being a coach. What amazing positioning. Is this all the benefits of gaming while practicing to be undistracted? Looks like I still need further cultivation. Feng Kaiwian's eyes were burning, but he seemed to have expected it. Wang Lu was somewhat astonished as well. Although she had expected Zhou Wen's results to be excellent, she never expected them to be this good. It only took him 47 seconds. Zhou Wen was indeed faster than them by an order of magnitude, but this order was at the level of minutes. And Jing looked at the screen calmly, but her expression was a little odd. It was unknown what she was thinking. Mr. Liu, are these results real? This is a strategy designed by the counselors before getting Zhou Wen to carry it out, right? Li Zuo still found it unbelievable. Unfortunately, no counselor participated in the design of this strategy. The strategy was written by Zhou Wen and Li Xuan. I also spent money on the discussion forums to read their monetized thread before I learned that there was such a method to kill bronze luck beasts. Such a line of thinking and design can be said to be unique. To resolve a problem from a weakling's point of view relying on intelligence and not strength is very difficult. Today, we will be discussing in detail the ingenuity of the design and their unique line of thinking. I believe all of you will learn plenty from it, especially their thoughts on solving the problem. Strength might not be the only solution to resolving problems. This is very important. Article 162 of 1597. Li Xuan organized another event for the Xuanwen Club. Zhou Wen originally thought that not many people would turn up. If Gu Dian didn't come, there would at most be 4 people, but when he arrived, he realized that there were more people than he imagined. Fang Ruoxi and Tian Xingdong were there as well. Gu Dian had also come. Apart from the original 5 people from the Xuanwen Club, there were also Feng Qian, Wang Lu, Li Weiyang, and Hui Haifeng. Li Xuan chuckled and said, the club's event is a joint activity between our Xuanwen Club, Weiyang Club, and the Ocean Club. Furthermore, our Xuanwen Club has added 2 more formal members. They are Feng Qian and Wang Lu. Zhou Wen was slightly taken aback. He had been gaming permanently for the past few days and had not paid any attention to the situation regarding the Xuanwen Club. Only then did he realize that Feng Qian and Wang Lu had been roped into the Xuanwen Club by Li Xuan. Li Xuan had set his sights on Restriction City. The group headed for the city with great fanfare. The Weiyang Club consisted of only girls while the Ocean Club was mainly boys. Furthermore, they were all infamous problematic students in school. With Li Xuan and Zhou Wen's Xuanwen Club having some odd ones out, this group quickly attracted the attention of the school. The first person to receive the news was Wei Ji. As the president of Sunset College's student council, he acutely believed that this matter was somewhat unusual. Perhaps it represented future trends of the students of Sunset College. Hui Haifeng and his gang are actually so close to Zhou Wen and Li Xuan. Wang Lu and Feng Qian from the special class all have large families backing them, so they haven't joined any clubs. Now, they have joined the Xuanwen Club and that strange Gu Dian has joined them too. Will the Xuanwen Club become the second Ocean Club in the future? No, I have to see what those people are up to. Wei Ji quickly gathered student counselors and joined the Xuanwen Club's activities in the name of maintaining order and keeping the students safe. Together, they entered Restriction City with Li Xuan and company. Due to the addition of the student council, the group once again grew bigger. There were already more than 50 people. After the group entered Restriction City, they directly stormed the area. The ordinary bronze beasts and bronze birds couldn't withstand the slaughtering of so many students. Surprisingly, Feng Qian, who loved to use his saber, didn't take action this time. He was gaming on his phone just like Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen saw that the game Feng Qian was playing was a mini-game called Last 20 Seconds If You Are a Man. The game was very simple, but it wasn't easy to maintain 20 seconds in the game without dying. When Zhou Wen saw Feng Qian gaming, the latter had already lasted more than a minute. However, he still failed to escape the fate of death. As there were so many students and many of them were extremely powerful seniors, the originally dangerous Restriction City seemed to become a tourist attraction. Even the bronze luck beasts were quickly cleared. Wang Lu had even used Zhou Wen's strategy to kill one. Indeed, she had easily improved her results to less than a minute. Zhou Wen, I think highly of you. If you join the student council now, there's a high chance of becoming the president of the student council. Think about it, Wei Ji said to Zhou Wen when they were alone. I'm fine as is. Besides, I only like gaming. I can't be president, Zhou Wen said. No one was born to be one. Just take your time to learn. You don't have to be in a hurry to answer me. Think about it first, Wei Ji said with a smile. Seeing Hui Haifeng walk over, Wei Ji didn't wish to meet him. He bade Zhou Wen farewell and left. Did Wei Ji tell you that he thinks highly of you and wants you to join the student council to work with him? And when he leaves in the future, you will be the president of the student council. Hui Haifeng walked to Zhou Wen's side and said with a smile. Zhou Wen was slightly taken aback. Although his words were somewhat different, they had the same meaning. Hui Haifeng smiled and said, "There's no need to be surprised. That punk is like that. He has said those words to almost every single member of the Ocean Club." I see. Zhou Wen was enlightened as he finally understood why Hui Haifeng had guessed Wei Ji's words so accurately. "I've read your Bronze Luck Beast strategy. It's truly impressive. It has nothing to do with your combat strength. It's the kind of planning ability that can calculate such shortcuts in chaotic environments that can avoid the sacrifice of many soldiers when exploring new dimensional zones," Hui Haifeng said. "You plan on joining the army in the future?" Zhou Wen asked Hui Haifeng. Hui Haifeng nodded. "If there's a chance, I'll join the army. If there's no chance, I'll work on something related. If a man can't do something jaw-dropping his entire life, I feel like life would have been lived in vain." "I wish you success." Although Zhou Wen didn't share the same views, it didn't stop him from appreciating such a person. At the very least, he had a good impression of Hui Haifeng. Everyone kept storming into Restriction City as all sorts of bronze beasts were killed. Unfortunately, the drop rates of the bronze beasts were too low. It would only produce a single-dimensional crystal occasionally. Furthermore, their attributes were generally not high. As he walked forward, Zhou Wen suddenly felt the mysterious phone in his pocket vibrate. It left him somewhat taken aback. He had already found the tiny palm print of Restriction City and had downloaded it into his phone. Why was the mysterious phone still vibrating? Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, Zhou Wen deliberately stayed at the back. He took out the mysterious phone, wanting to know why it was vibrating. As soon as he took out the phone, the camera was automatically activated. Zhou Wen raised his phone and looked around the city. When a scene appeared on his screen, the camera app automatically locked onto it. A green frame appeared that enclosed something on the screen. It was an old and worn wall. At a glance, it seemed as though there was nothing different about it. There was nothing different about it from the brick walls beside it. However, when Zhou Wen walked to the side of the brick wall and touched it with his hand, he realized that the brick wall wasn't made of ordinary brick but some kind of metal. The mysterious phone's camera function was only locked onto the metal wall, but it didn't automatically take pictures or lock onto any patterns. Zhou Wen was momentarily unsure of what was so special about the metal wall. It was a part of a particular building, but the structure was somewhat odd. It was squarish, like a miniature ancient city. The four walls of the city were only about 10 meters tall. Zhou Wen circled the building but didn't find any doors or windows. Using his ability to fly thanks to the God-fiend life providence, he flew to the top of the building and discovered that the roof was sealed as well. The entire building didn't seem to have an entrance. Can it be that the item that causes the mysterious phone to vibrate is inside the building and not the metal wall itself? Zhou Wen wondered. Article 163 of 1597. What did you discover? Wang Lu jumped up and sized up the building beneath her. This building is a little odd. There aren't any entrances or windows around it. Furthermore, it doesn't seem to use ordinary bricks. It seems to be made from a special type of bronze, Zhou Wen said. It's indeed a little odd. Wang Lu crouched down to touch it and nodded. It's metal. It's indeed a little strange. Their actions attracted Li Xuan and the company. Wang Lu explained the situation and everyone agreed that the building was strange. All of you, move aside. Let me try and see if I can smash it open. A stout boy from the Ocean Club struck down at the metal wall with a huge hammer. The boy was at the legendary stage, and he was a strength type. He had also used his metal hammer that had primordial gold mixed in, combined with his primordial energy skill, to strike the wall. Even if the wall was made of metal bricks, he should have been able to smash open a crack. However, not only did he fail to blast through the metal wall, he even fell to the ground from the recoil. The hammer in his hand flew out of his hand, and his hands were dripping with blood. The area between his thumb and index finger had torn. It's so hard. Everyone was shocked. The boy was famous for his strength in school, but due to his poor speed, he was unable to enter the top 10. In terms of strength alone, he would probably be ranked in the top 3. For the full strength strike from such a person to fail to scratch the surface of the metal wall made it clear that it was truly extraordinary. This only intrigued everyone further. They tried a variety of methods, but unfortunately, they failed to succeed in seeing what was inside. Even Zhou Wen used Truth Listener's powers. He wanted to hear what was inside, but the interior of the building seemed to be a chunk of solid mass. There wasn't any movement at all. Zhou Wen couldn't hear a thing from the dead silence. That's Death City. A voice suddenly sounded. Zhou Wen looked in the direction of the voice and saw that the person speaking was a long-haired boy. His looks were ordinary, but he looked refined. He had a scholarly air to him. Zhou Wen hadn't noticed him in the beginning, perhaps because of his reticent temperament that didn't attract much attention among the students. Zhongyan, this strange building is called Death City. Do you know its origins? Wei Ji asked him. Zhang Yan was a member of the student council, but he didn't look like one of the key members. He was probably just an ordinary member, so no one had noticed him before. In the Zhou dynasty, while humans were still confined to the borders of undeveloped barbaric behavior, many people believed in ghosts and gods, and it was very common for them to carry out rituals to worship the heavens. The funeral rituals were also very particular, especially the members of the royal family back then. In the later years of the Eastern Zhou dynasty, King Zhou became afraid of death. He built Death City and placed his bones and blood in it, hoping that by indicating his passing he could hide from the heavens and escape death. Unfortunately, heaven's will couldn't be violated. He ultimately died. Zhang Yan's eyes flashed a look of mockery. After a pause, Zhang Yan continued, according to the few historical records, Death City is made of bronze, with no doors or windows. Hearing Zhang Yan's words, everyone was increasingly convinced that this strange bronze building was the legendary Death City. I thought it was something good, but it turns out it's just a fake grave. It only spells bad luck, a boy said. That might not be the case, said Zhang Yan indifferently. In order to fool the ghosts and gods, King Zhou didn't only put his bones and blood in Dead City, he also buried his personal items and treasures with him. There were even some brutal kings who would even bury their beloved concubines alive. In order to fool the ghosts and gods, he had put in much effort. Does that mean that there might be treasures inside? Many students' eyes lit up when they heard that. If the history books are right, there will definitely be burial items inside. However, now that this place has turned into a dimensional zone, there might be some abnormal changes in it. It wouldn't be surprising if it had dimensional creatures inside, said Zhang Yan. Zhang Yan, do you know how to open Death City? Wei Ji asked Zhang Yan. It was his first time realizing that Zhang Yan had such a side to him, as though it was somewhat different from the person he knew before. Dig into the area beneath the south wall of Death City. If this is really East Zhao's Death City, there should be an entrance there, Zhang Yan said. Wei Ji arranged for people to dig according to Zhang Yan's instructions. After a hole 7 to 8 feet deep was dug, they saw a hole appear on the metal wall. After digging further down, a circular hole appeared. It was a tunnel that went all the way into Death City, but it was winding, making it impossible to see what was going on inside. Which one of us is willing to go in first and take a look? Wei Ji said. I don't know about others, but I'm definitely entering to take a look. However, I don't want to be the first to enter, Li Xuan said. After a short discussion, Hui Haifeng was the first to enter. The 4 clubs sent a few people in. Zhou Wen originally didn't wish to enter, but Li Xuan pulled him inside. Soon, they heard Hui Haifeng's voice from ahead. Everyone, come on in. There's no danger inside. By the time Zhou Wen and Li Xuan climbed in, Wei Ji, Hui Haifeng, Feng Qian, Li Weiyang and the company were already standing in Death City. Zhou Wen originally imagined that he would see skeletons and coffins, but after entering, he realized that there was nothing of that sort. There was only a tree in the city. The tree was about 2 meters tall. The branches and leaves were all black, but there were many thin white lines on them. It looked like a painting drawn in black and white. Zhang Yan, what's going on? Didn't you say that this Death City has King Zhao's bones and burial items? Why is there only this tree? Wei Ji questioned Zhang Yan. Zhang Yan said indifferently, I've already said that those are records in the history books. After the dimensional storms, it's normal to have abnormal changes inside. Then do you know what tree this is? Someone asked. I don't know, Zhang Yan replied straightforwardly. Everyone was somewhat disappointed. Even though they didn't really have any hopes of digging up any treasures, learning that there was only one tree in there wiped away their curiosity instantly. They were somewhat disappointed. What crappy tree is this? It caused us to waste so much time. A member of the Ocean Club kicked the tree trunk unhappily. With this kick, the pitch-black tree swayed and turned a bright white color. In the blink of an eye, the black tree had turned completely white. Article 164 of 1597. Chapter 164 The Color-Changing Tree. The originally black tree turned snow white in an instant. Everyone was shocked and retreated warily. However, other than turning snow white, the tree did not undergo any other changes, nor was there any danger. After a while, the white tree gradually turned black again, as if nothing had happened. This tree is a little strange. It's clearly a black tree, so why did it suddenly turn white? Li Xuan was extremely curious as he held a wooden stick and stabbed it a few times. However, the black tree remained black without any changes from before. Zhou Wen aimed his mysterious phone at the black tree and the camera function immediately locked onto it. Clearly, it was the tree that had caused the mysterious phone to vibrate. He pressed the shutter button and the phone immediately entered the picture-taking interface. Quite a number of people were using their cell phones to illuminate the area as well as taking pictures of the black tree. Zhou Wen's actions didn't seem too out of the ordinary. As there was no danger, someone boldly shook the black tree. In the next second, the black tree had turned into a ruby-like color. It was like a gem in the shape of a tree, shimmering with a dazzling glow of riches. The person shaking the tree was a girl. This scene gave her a shock and she hurriedly retreated. Just like before, nothing dangerous happened. The red gem tree gradually lost its luster and soon returned to its dark appearance. This is really strange. Li Xuan seemed to have thought of something as he carefully shook the black tree with his hand. Indeed, the black tree had changed color again. However, it was different from the previous few colors. This time, the black tree had turned golden. It seems like the color will be different depending on the person, Li Xuan said. Let me give it a try. Everyone was curious as they attempted to shake the black tree. Indeed, just as Li Xuan said, when different people touched the black tree, it would transform into another color. Even if it changed to red, the red itself was a different shade. Old Joe, try it too, Li Xuan said to Zhou Wen. There's no need. I don't like to take risks. It's best you don't touch it. Zhou Wen shook his head. Before figuring out what the black tree was, he was unwilling to touch it. The phone was still in the middle of downloading, and the download speed seemed much slower than before. After the crowd had their fun, they realized that the black tree didn't have any other function other than changing colors. Soon, they were bored with it. As there was nothing else here, everyone left Death City and continued exploring Restriction City. The mysterious phone was still in the middle of downloading. It didn't finish even when the club activity ended and everyone left together. With the screen constantly downloading, Zhou Wen had no way of gaming. After returning to his dorm, he had a good nap, a rather rare opportunity. Ever since he had advanced to the legendary stage, the feeling of having sleep paralysis hadn't happened again. Zhou Wen had a good nap and ended up waking the next morning. After washing up and eating, he realized that the download had been completed when he unlocked the mysterious phone. There was a tree-shaped icon on the home screen. However, the cartoon-styled icon looked different from the black tree. There were 3 words "Dead Man Tree" written below. Zhou Wen was somewhat curious as to why a tree had an instance dungeon. He immediately tapped on the tree's icon. After launching the app, the scene turned black. In the dark space, there was a tree, a black one. However, in the dark cavern, one could clearly see the tree's appearance. Apart from its cartoon-styled appearance, it was the black tree they had encountered in Death City. The blood-colored avatar stood in front of it, but apart from the black tree, there was nothing around it. Zhou Wen was momentarily at a loss as to what the instance dungeon was for. He summoned the silver-winged flying ant and let it fly towards the black tree. He then attacked the black tree with magical needle which stabbed into it but failed to penetrate it. He wasn't able to damage the black tree at all either. The tree didn't react and remained standing quietly in the darkness. Zhou Wen hesitated for a moment before deciding to let the blood-colored avatar personally touch the tree to see if there would be any abnormal changes. However, Zhou Wen found it strange that after the blood-colored avatar touched it, the color of the black tree did not change. It was still black, completely the same as before. Strange, why didn't the color change? Zhou Wen remembered that in Death City, the black tree had undergone a change in color when people touched it. Nothing like what had happened to him was experienced in-game. Is it me, or is it a problem with the game? Zhou Wen was momentarily unsure of what the tree was for, nor did he understand the use of the instance dungeon. All he could do was ignore it for the time being. After quitting the game, he logged into other dungeons to hunt monsters. Now, Zhou Wen only grinded 2 types of monsters. One was mutated legendary monsters, since only they could drop stats crystals above 18 points, which were of use to him. Another was epic creatures that could drop stats crystals that exceeded 20 points. They were similarly useful to Zhou Wen. However, epic creatures were too powerful. He was no match for the few epic creatures Zhou Wen encountered in-game, so all he could do was search for the mutated legendary creatures. In a room at the Yin family's residence in Luang, and Tianzuo had recently returned home. Tianzuo, has the situation around Luang been very bad recently? Ouyang asked worriedly. It's not that bad. Apart from the problematic matters at the Kai River, there aren't too many problems in other places, said Tianzuo with a smile. Mom, don't worry. As long as I'm in Luang, I won't let those dimensional creatures invade Luang. Ouyang nodded slightly and sighed before saying, the Holy Land qualification competition is just around the corner. If Zhou Wen goes alone, I won't be at ease. Let Ah Sheng accompany him, right? Mom, are you really letting Zhou Wen go? Aren't you going to reconsider? And Tianzuo frowned. Ouyang shook her head and said, I know what you're thinking. However, Xiaojin has a congenital illness. It would be terrifying if something were to happen to her during her acceptance of the special physique. I don't want little Jing to take any risks. Do you understand? Understood. And Tianzuo added, but I believe that little Jing can do it. There's no need to elaborate on this matter. I've already made up my mind. Furthermore, the nomination has been changed to Zhou Wen. There's no way to change it. Ouyang stopped Tianzuo from continuing. And Tianzuo remained silent. Although he didn't agree with Ouyang decision, he would not go against her wishes. He had always been a filial son. Ouyang sighed lightly. Besides, Zhou Wen might not be willing to go. He has no blood relationship with the two of you, but his temper is extraordinarily similar. He's always so stubborn. It's different. He's stubborn while we are confident, said Tianzuo proudly. Ouyang only looked at Tianzuo and smiled without saying another word. Article 165 of 1597. Chapter 165 Dead Man Tree. And Jing huddled into a ball and leaned against the corner of the wall, enduring the pain that was like a knife being twisted inside her. Why don't people who can cultivate the sun strafe art cherish it? I have to endure such pain just to cultivate it. Why is heaven so unfair to me? And Jing thought of Zhou Wen amidst the pain as she clenched her teeth, seemingly reducing the pain she felt. She had a congenital disease, so she couldn't cultivate sun strafe art, a primordial energy art which was highly yang in nature. However, if she failed to master the sun strafe art, she would not be able to obtain the special physique she needed. In the Holy Land, there were several special physiques. The special physiques that everyone could obtain were different, but they had to have the corresponding strength attributes to obtain the corresponding special physiques. The special physique that Jing wanted was the sun god body. If she could master the sun strafe art, she would have an 80% chance of obtaining the sun god body if she stood out. However, the sun strafe art didn't match her body's attributes. When she cultivated the sun strafe art, it would trigger her congenital illness. Every time she cultivated, she would feel like dying due to the excruciating pain. And Jing didn't give up because of this. Even though Ouyang had forbidden her from cultivating the sun strafe art, she still secretly endured it. Even Ouyang believed that Jing had advanced to the legendary stage by using another primordial energy art. She never expected Jing to endure extreme pain to advance to the legendary stage with the sun strafe art. However, this matter was something Jing had never told anyone. Even Tianzuo wasn't aware of it. After completing the sun strafe art's cultivation, the pain in Jing's body gradually disappeared, making her complexion turn for the better. After taking a shower and changing into a clean set of clothes, Jing walked out of her dorm and arrived in front of her neighbor's door. After a moment of hesitation, her eyes turned resolute as she pressed the doorbell of Zhou Wen's dorm. What's the matter? Zhou Wen opened the door and asked curiously when he saw Jing standing outside. Do you still remember our 3-month contract? She asked calmly. I don't remember. Zhou Wen shook his head. It was only a one-sided statement by Jing. He had never agreed to a 3-month contract. It doesn't matter whether you remember it or not. Although it's not 3 months yet, since you've already advanced to the legendary stage and have so many powerful pets, it will be a fair battle between us now. It's time for us to end things, Jing said. I'm not interested in that special physique nomination. If you want it that much, I can accompany you to meet Sis Lan. Let me convince her to return the nomination to you, Zhou Wen said. And Jing looked at Zhou Wen and suddenly felt extremely aggrieved. She had risked her life to obtain the nomination, but it was nothing of importance to Zhou Wen. Suddenly, Jing's fighting spirit vanished without a trace. So what if I defeat Zhou Wen? So what if I prove that I'm more outstanding than him? I still can't go to the Holy Land to get the sun god body. And Jing felt like everything was meaningless. Without looking at Zhou Wen again, Jing turned and left, looking somewhat lost. Strange person. Zhou Wen found it odd when he saw Jing leave just like that. However, since Jing had automatically given up antagonizing him, it was naturally best for Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen, bad news. Just as Zhou Wen was about to close the door and return to his room to continue gaming, he saw Li Xuan running over, panting. What's wrong? Zhou Wen asked with a frown. Something happened. Something big has happened. Li Xuan gasped for breath as he said, someone died in our college. A few students died. Did they die in the dimensional zones? Zhou Wen asked. No, they died in school. Furthermore, the people who died were people who joined us on our trip to Restriction City yesterday. Furthermore, all of them had entered Death City as well. That includes Wang Lu, Li Xuan said with an odd expression. Wang Lu is dead. How did they die? Zhou Wen was alarmed when he heard that. I don't know. Li Xuan shook his head. How do you not know? Zhou Wen frowned slightly. I heard from the school's management that they have yet to find out the cause of their deaths, nor do they know how they died. A few of them were walking when they suddenly collapsed to the ground and died. They were not breathing and their heart had stopped beating. The cause of death hasn't been found either. Wang Lu was roughly the same. She was reading in the library when she suddenly fell to the ground. There wasn't any warning. The people from the school and the military are investigating, but there hasn't been an answer yet. With that said, fear appeared on Li Xuan's face. What's more frightening is that they died at the same time. Furthermore what? Zhou Wen knew that Li Xuan had definitely discovered something important. Further, if I remember correctly, those people who died had touched that black tree. Coincidentally, when they touched the black tree turned red. Li Xuan swallowed his saliva and continued, I don't know if this has anything to do with their deaths, but it's too much of a coincidence. Did you tell the counselors about this? Zhou Wen had an ominous feeling. I told them. The college has already sent people to Restriction City and found that bronze building. However, after entering, there was no sight of that black tree. There was nothing inside, not even a leaf. It's as if there was never a tree there. When Li Xuan said that, his body trembled slightly. Clearly, he was feeling a little horrified. Let's go. Take me to their corpses, Zhou Wen said through gritted teeth. The military has already taken over this matter and the corpses are in the military's hands. I'm afraid it will be difficult for us to enter, Li Xuan said. Take me there now. As Zhou Wen spoke, he switched on the mysterious phone and opened the dead man tree icon. After he loaded the game, Zhou Wen immediately felt his heart turn cold when he saw the dead tree. He saw that the originally pitch-black dead tree was now completely red, like it was carved out of a ruby. It emitted a strange red glow. The deaths of Wang Lu and company are indeed related to this dead man tree. Now that the tree has turned red, Wang Lu and company have died. Then, if the tree becomes another color, will those students who share the same color after touching the tree also die? Zhou Wen's ominous feeling intensified. Now, all he wanted to do was quickly see their corpses and see how their deaths were related to the dead man tree. He wanted to know if there was still a chance of them being revived. And Jing overheard their conversation and subconsciously followed them. Under Li Xuan's lead, the trio quickly arrived at the school's military base. Their corpses are inside, but it's not just us, even if a counselor comes, they will definitely not be able to enter without the military's permission, Li Xuan said as he pointed at the door manned by guards. Article 166 of 1597. Chapter 166 Dissection. Jing, can you take us in? Zhou Wen cast his gaze at Jing. At that moment, he couldn't be bothered about their differences anymore. Now, Zhou Wen was afraid that the military would dissect their corpses, spelling doom to everything. Sure, but I have one condition, Jing said after some thought. I promise to fight you. Take me in immediately, Zhou Wen said straight away. I didn't say I wanted to fight you, Jing said, surprising Zhou Wen. Then what do you want? Zhou Wen asked with a frown. I haven't thought about it yet. Just treat it as if you owe me one. I'll tell you after I've thought it through. After Jing said that, she didn't wait for Zhou Wen to rush her as she walked straight to the door. Hello, please show some identification. The two soldiers who were guarding the door clearly recognized Jing. However, after saluting her, they still kept her outside and did not let her in immediately. Jing seemed to have known this would happen, so she didn't react in any special manner. She took out an identification card from her pocket before the soldiers allowed her to take Zhou Wen and Li Xuan into the encampment. After asking where the morgue was, they went straight to it. She was no stranger to the military encampment here. Zhou Wen was somewhat glad that Jing was here. Otherwise, with the encampment so huge, it wouldn't be easy for him and Li Xuan to come in and find the morgue. Zhou Wen looked at his phone as he walked, only to see 5 flower buds appear on the glowing red dead man tree. The flower buds also looked like they were carved out of ruby. It was even more dazzling, but they exuded an evil aura. Through the ruby-like flower petals, he could vaguely see something inside, as if it were a beating heart. How many dead classmates are there? Zhou Wen asked. 5. Li Xuan thought for a moment before replying. Zhou Wen was almost certain that Wang Lu and company's deaths had something to do with the 5 flowers on the dead man tree. However, he didn't know what the 5 flowers meant, nor did he know what to do. He could only wait until he saw the corpses before deciding. In the morgue, Deputy Inspector Qin Wufu and a few epic experts stationed at Sunset College were listening to the forensics report. There are no obvious wounds or symptoms on the outside. We didn't find anything through X-ray either. We can only perform an autopsy now before we decide the outcome, said Coroner Yan Zhen. No, we can't dissect them. An epic expert immediately rejected Yan Zhen's words with a firm tone. If we don't do an autopsy, it will be difficult to find the true reason for the deaths, Yan Zhen said slowly. The daughter of the Wang family died here for no reason. If we were to dissect her body, how are we going to explain it to the Wang family when they arrive? The epic expert from before said. Since Wang Le's corpse cannot be dissected, we can first dissect the corpses of the other 4, said Yan Zhen. That would work. The epic expert's tone softened significantly. You can't dissect them. However, Qin Wufu vetoed Yan Zhen's suggestion. Why can't we dissect them? Yan Zhen asked as he looked at Qin Wufu. Although their bodily functions have stopped, they still have a tiny bit of life on them. They might not be truly dead yet. You can't dissect them and kill them. Qin Wufu said. Yan Zhen laughed after hearing that. Deputy Inspector, if we don't dissect them now, we won't be able to find the reason why they are in such a state. Then, what's the difference between them and the dead? Now, all we need to do is dissect the other 4 students, and we might be able to find out the reason. Who knows, we might be able to save Wang Lu. This is the best choice we have right now, isn't it? A few epic officers also felt that this was a pretty viable plan. If Wang Lu could be saved, their problems would be greatly reduced. If Wang Lu can be saved, the others should be saved as well, Qin Wufu said as he stared at Yan Zhen. Please forgive me for my inadequacies, Yan Zhen said. All of you may leave. I'll chat with Dr. Yan alone. Qin Wufu waved his hand and dismissed everyone. They left the morgue, leaving only Yan Zhen and Qin Wufu behind. At this moment, Qin Wufu stared at Yan Zhen and said coldly, Yan Zhen, I know that you can save them. You want to dissect them only because you want to know what kind of power has turned them into this. Deputy Inspector, aren't you thinking too highly of me? I'm just a doctor, not a god. I don't even know what kind of injuries they have suffered, so how can I save them? Yan Zhen nudged his glasses and said with an unperturbed expression. Speak. What condition do you want to save them? Qin Wufu frowned. There's no condition. Dissect 4 corpses and save one, Yan Zhen said indifferently, licking his lips as he stared at the 5 corpses. They are living people, not your experimental subjects. A furious expression appeared on Qin Wufu's face. They're real people if I save them. If not, they are just dead people. Using the dead as experimental subjects wasn't even a big deal back in times of peace. Yan Zhen's tone sounded like he was saying something that was only right. Qin Wufu was so angry that his face turned livid. If he didn't know Yan Zhen well enough, he would probably have drawn his gun and killed this despicable fellow. But now, he couldn't do that. The only person who could save these 5 students was Yan Zhen. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Qin Wufu said coldly, rescue these 5 students. I will apply for you to use the bodies of the dead soldiers for your experiments. No, I want these 4 experimental subjects. Yan Zhen categorically rejected Qin Wufu. There was no room for negotiation. Haven't you always been wanting to experiment with the corpses of dead soldiers? If you miss this chance, you definitely won't get another one. You're giving that up just to dissect these 4 students. Is it worth it? Qin Wufu looked at Yan Zhen and said. It's worth it. These 5 people are in a very strange state. If I dissect them, it might be of great help to my research. I want to see what kind of power is at work, said Yan Zhen. I will definitely not give you this opportunity, said Qin Wufu angrily. You have no choice. If I don't save them, Wang Lu will also die. Should I let Wang Lu die with the 4 of them or let the 4 die while Wang Lu lives? Deputy Inspector Qin, make your choice. Yan Zhen looked at Qin Wufu with certainty as though he was certain that Qin Wufu could do nothing about him. Qin Wufu stared intently at Yan Zhen, wishing that he could slay this bastard with his saber. However, he knew that it was useless even if he killed him. Yan Zhen definitely wouldn't yield unless he achieved his goals. Killing him made no difference. Furthermore, killing Yan Zhen meant Wang Lu was doomed. Just as Qin Wufu was about to compromise, he suddenly heard the door to the morgue being pushed open. He could not help but be enraged as he shouted coldly, "Get out! Who let you in?" Article 167 of 1597. Uncle Qin. And Jing looked at the furious Qin Wufu, a little puzzled who could make him so angry. Although Qin Wufu's name had the implications of being a warrior, he was not one that was prone to anger. The last time Jing saw him angry was a childhood memory. The reason Qin Wufu was angry was not that he couldn't save those 4 students. If there was really no way to save them, Qin Wufu wouldn't be angered or have his judgment affected even when an entire battalion was wiped out in war, much less the deaths of 4 students. But now, there was a way to save them, but he could only watch helplessly as 4 students died. Furthermore, they died in the hands of a coroner on their side. This was something that Qin Wufu couldn't accept. Little Jing, why are you here? Qin Wufu's expression softened when he saw Jing. Uncle Qin, we would like to see the bodies of those 5 students. And Jing explained the purpose of her visit. Qin Wufu said, what's so nice about corpses? Little Jing, bring your classmates to my office first. Uncle Qin will catch up with you after I'm done here. Inspector Qin, just like them, we had entered the bronze building in Restriction City. We have also touched a tree that can change color, Zhou Wen said. Qin Wufu said, the military has already sent people to investigate the situation several times. There is indeed a bronze building in Restriction City, but there's no sign of the tree all of you mentioned. So many of us students saw that tree. So many of us can't be wrong, right? Li Xuan asked. I already know about this. I will send people to continue the investigation. There are still matters to be handled here. Go outside and wait. Qin Wufu wanted to quickly convince Yan Zhen to save the 5 students. Inspector Qin, when the 5 of them touched that tree, the tree turned red, and now they have died in a bizarre manner. There are more than a dozen students who touched the tree, causing it to turn into another color. Now that Wang Lu and the rest are dead, will the other students die one day? If we don't figure out the problem regarding Wang Lu and the others, there might be even more students dying, Zhou Wen said. When Yan Zhen heard this, he smiled and said, this student is right. If we don't figure out the cause of their deaths now, more people will die. My dissection of them now is to prevent more students from dying. It's best you quickly decide. You can't dissect them, Zhou Wen said before Qin Wufu could answer. After seeing Wang Lu and company's corpses, he was even more certain that they hadn't really died. After approaching their corpses, the 5 flower buds in game became even more dazzling, with signs of blooming. Qin Wufu, Yan Zhen and even Jing and Li Xuan looked at Zhou Wen in puzzlement, unsure why he was so agitated. Zhou Wen knew that he had to take the risk. It was impossible for Qin Wufu to hear a student like him shoot his mouth. Furthermore, Zhou Wen himself didn't know what was happening, so how could he convince Qin Wufu? Therefore, he could only take a gamble. If one of them could be revived, then Qin Wufu would naturally disagree with the dissection of the corpses. I don't think they're dead yet. They shouldn't be dissected, Zhou Wen said as he pointed at the corpses of Wang Lu and company. Qin Wufu was slightly taken aback as he couldn't help but carefully size up Zhou Wen. He had been engaged in battle all his life, so he was accustomed to seeing dead people. Furthermore, with the cultivation of his primordial energy art, he could sense that Wang Lu and company were not truly dead. A student like Zhou Wen was at most at the legendary stage, but he could tell that Wang Lu and the others were still alive. This left him astonished. What's your name? Why do you say that they aren't dead yet? Qin Wufu asked Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen didn't answer the first question and directly said, I've seen that tree with them before. Furthermore, I am more sensitive than most people. I can sense that they have the aura of that tree and the aura of the tree represses their aura. That results in this phenomenon of a fake death. If the aura of that tree is removed, they might be able to come back to life. Can you really sense their auras? Qin Wufu sized up Zhou Wen from head to toe as he was secretly impressed with him. From his point of view, the aura Zhou Wen mentioned was likely life force. It was impossible to see or touch life force. Only people who cultivated some special primordial energy art or had such special abilities could sense it. Although Qin Wufu didn't know how true it was for Zhou Wen to be able to sense the existence of life force, the current situation matched Wang Lu and company's. Yes. Zhou Wen nodded. I'm already aware of the situation you mentioned. I'll think of a way to save your classmates. You can return now. Although Qin Wufu thought highly of Zhou Wen, he didn't think too much of it. All he thought was that Zhou Wen had a keen sense. Zhou Wen knew that it was impossible to convince Qin Wufu with his empty words as a student. Furthermore, he lacked the plans needed to save Wang Lu and company. As he turned to leave, Zhou Wen took out his cell phone to take a look. At the same time, he ordered the blood-colored avatar to slash at one of the flowers. Zhou Wen was originally somewhat hesitant to sever the flower buds. After all, this was a risk. If he severed them and ended up harming them, it would be equivalent to him killing Wang Lu and company. But now, the military clearly didn't have any good solutions. There was a high chance that they were going to dissect the students. If they were to do so, death was certain. Therefore, Zhou Wen might as well give it a try. That way, there would at least be a chance of survival. Through the blood-colored avatar's perception, Zhou Wen tried his best to sense the 5 flower buds on the tree. He could vaguely sense that the aura within the 5 flowers seemed somewhat different. They corresponded to the 5 corpses on the bed. Zhou Wen roughly determined which flower bud belonged to Wang Lu before he got the blood-colored avatar to slash at another flower bud. Most people would subconsciously prioritize protecting people who were closer to them. Those who could prioritize protecting strangers or treat them as equals were saints. Zhou Wen wasn't a saint, so he chose an unfamiliar classmate as his first test subject. The astral slash blade slashed across the flower bud like a sharp blade. The flower bud and leaves shook a few times but failed to be lopped off. Zhou Wen's heart tightened. The astral slash blade was already considered a relatively powerful offensive primordial energy skill of his. But if the astral slash blade couldn't injure the flower bud, it was likely that his other primordial energy skills would be ineffective. Although the saber beam failed to cut off the flower bud, the corpse on the bed suddenly moved and sat up straight like a zombie having come back to life. Article 168 of 1597. Chapter 168 Slaying Flowers. The few of them were shocked as they looked at the corpse. It was the corpse of a male student. However, in the next second, the corpse fell back onto the bed without any movement. Yan Zhen immediately went forward to do a checkup. Qin Wufu also walked to the bed and stared at the corpse, hoping that things would turn for the better. He was in no mood to bother with Zhou Wen and company. The trio stopped in their tracks and watched the situation on the bed. Zhou Wen stood near the wall behind them and got the blood-colored avatar to summon Banana Fairy. The Banana Fairy held the banana leaf and waved it at the flower bud on the tree. The grand yin wind swept over, causing the leaves to shake violently. However, that was all. It failed to blow off the flower buds. On the other hand, the corpse began to tremble again. It was an extremely harrowing sight. When Zhou Wen saw that he couldn't even blow off the flower bud with the grand yin wind, his expression warped. He knew that it would be very difficult for him to cut off the flower bud today. Unwilling to watch Wang Lu and company die, Zhou Wen had no choice but to summon his pets and attack the flower bud one after another. It could be considered a last-ditch effort. How is this happening? The boy's corpse shook continuously. Yan Zhen had used several methods but failed to detect anything, nor could he stop the shaking. Noticing that Yan Zhen seemed to be at a loss, Qin Wufu couldn't help but frown. Yan Zhen's medical skills were not only excellent, and the primordial energy art he cultivated had something to do with his life providence and life soul, so he had an ability that was just short of reviving the dead. Now that he couldn't do anything about it, things were clearly turning for the worse. Zhou Wen watched his pets attack the flower bud one by one, but it was completely ineffective. Just as he was feeling disappointed, he saw Truth Listener's figure flash. It arrived in front of the flower bud, grabbed it with its paw, and plucked it off. Zhou Wen couldn't help but be delighted. The moment the flower bud was plucked, the boy, who had been trembling non-stop on the bed, suddenly sat up. His tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. What? What are you trying to do? When the boy saw Yan Zhen about to stab him with a needle, he immediately shouted and jumped down from the bed. Yan Zhen, quickly stop. Qin Wufu was overjoyed. At the same time, he stopped Yan Zhen and immediately subdued the boy. He quickly checked his body and discovered that other than being a little weak, the boy was no different from a normal, healthy person. Zhou Wen was also observing the boy. Seeing that he was indeed fine, he got Truth Listener to pluck another flower bud from the tree. The flower buds were easily removed by Truth Listener. This time, Zhou Wen felt a lot more relaxed. He immediately saw the game system notification, obtained an unripe dead man flower. As the flower bud was plucked off, another schoolmate was revived. This delighted Qin Wufu greatly. Li Xuan was also overjoyed. He had also touched the dead tree and had always been very afraid that he would die just like them. Now that he saw them alive again, he immediately felt a weight lift off his chest. Zhou Wen waited for a while, and seeing that the student was fine, he got Truth Listener to pluck the other flower buds. The flower buds were plucked off one after another. Similarly, the schoolmates revived. Wang Lu was the last to wake up as she looked around blankly, unsure of what had happened. Everyone was overjoyed. Only Yan Zhen frowned as he sized up the 5 students as if he was filled with doubt. Qin Wufu called out to the other medical personnel and asked them to give the 5 students a detailed examination. The results were normal, but their bodies were a little weak and were in need of nourishment. Seeing that they were fine, Zhou Wen heaved a sigh of relief before leaving with Li Xuan. Yan Zhen, it looks like you're going to be disappointed this time. Qin Wufu said to him in a good mood before leaving with Jing. However, Yan Zhen ignored Qin Wufu. He only looked at the test results of the 5 students and sank into deep thought. How did this happen? Their bodies had completely stopped functioning, so why would they be able to revive without any external help? Yan Zhen carefully recalled the entire process. The anomaly of the 5 corpses seemed to happen only after the 3 students arrived. Could it be related to the 3 students? Zhou Wen's face flashed across Yan Zhen's mind. Although there were 3 people, he had the deepest impression of Zhou Wen. Perhaps it was because Zhou Wen had said that Wang Lu and company were still alive, or because of Yan Zhen's intuition, he was increasingly convinced that the matter was related to Zhou Wen as he thought about it. That's interesting. Was this a subconscious act, or did he do something? The corners of Yan Zhen's mouth pulled up as though he had thought of something interesting. Yan Zhen was more inclined to the latter as he thought to himself they'd all come into contact with that tree. Could it be some situation that allows them to exert a mutual influence amongst themselves? It looks like there's a need for further research. After Zhou Wen returned to his dorm, he took out the mysterious phone and looked at the 5 ruby-like flower buds in Truth Listener's hand. Dead man flower, flower of a condensed soul, unripe. After some research, Zhou Wen realized that the 5 flowers could neither vanish nor be absorbed. They didn't seem to be of any use. From the looks of it, it must have been plucked off before it matured. That's why it turned into this. What would happen if the dead man flower matured? Zhou Wen wasn't at all sure. Just as he was considering how to deal with the 5 flower buds, he saw Truth Listener gesturing as though it had something to tell him. At the same time, Truth Listener's conscience was sent over. The thought was vague and Zhou Wen was unable to take in the information clearly, but he could roughly make out that Truth Listener wanted to eat the 5 flower buds. Since there was no point in keeping them, Zhou Wen agreed. Truth Listener was overjoyed as it opened its mouth and swallowed a flower. Zhou Wen suddenly thought of something as he hurriedly stopped Truth Listener from continuing eating the flower buds. Then, he made a phone call to confirm that the 5 students were fine. Only then did he relax and let Truth Listener swallow the remaining flower buds. Although Truth Listener's tiny body had devoured 5 flower buds, it still looked as though it was yearning for more. Zhou Wen didn't relax as he kept paying attention to the dead man tree's situation. Only after midnight did the red dead man tree gradually change its color. However, it didn't turn back to black, but golden. Zhou Wen remembered that the dead man tree had turned golden when Li Xuan touched it. He hurriedly made a call to Li Xuan. The ringtone on the other end kept ringing, but no one picked up. On the dead tree, another few sprouts grew out. Article 169 of 1597. Chapter 169 Showdown. Zhou Wen kept calling Li Xuan's phone, but no one picked up his calls. As for the sprouts, they gradually grew in size, forming a bud. Zhou Wen didn't hesitate. He summoned Truth Listener and plucked the few sprouts. Then he called Li Xuan and this time it connected. Old Zhou, why are you calling me in the middle of the night? Li Xuan's half-asleep voice came through the phone. I called you more than 10 times. Why didn't you answer? Zhou Wen asked. No way, right? As Li Xuan spoke, he looked at his phone. Indeed, there were more than 10 missed calls. He was immediately given a fright. Strange, my phone is right beside my pillow. How can it be that I didn't hear it? Cultivators had keen senses. No matter how soundly they slept, it was impossible for them not to be woken up by their cell phone's loud ringing. Perhaps you've been working too hard recently. Get some sleep. I need some as well. Zhou Wen was certain that Li Xuan had been in the same fake death state as Wang Lu. Ignoring what Li Xuan would be thinking, Zhou Wen hung up the phone and looked at the mysterious phone. He saw that Truth Listener had devoured all the little flower buds, licking its lips as though it hadn't had enough. For the next few days, Zhou Wen didn't game. He stared at the dead man tree every day. As long as it changed its color and sprouted, Zhou Wen got Truth Listener to pluck the flower buds and eat them. As such, there were no more bizarre deaths in the school. At most, it was rumored that someone had fainted, only to awaken quickly. On the 8th day, the dead tree recovered its original black color. Only when there weren't any other changes did Zhou Wen let out a long sigh. However, on second thought, Zhou Wen found it a pity. Up to now, he still didn't know what changes the flowers would undergo if they truly matured. Now that this tree existed in a mobile game, no one can see it again, much less touch it again. I'm afraid there's no chance to see the scene of the flower truly blooming. Zhou Wen felt a little regretful as he thought to himself, if only this tree can be taken out again. If anyone offends me in the future, I'll plant it at their doorstep. Without knowing how powerful the dead man tree is, they will die just from touching it. A death a touch, 2 touches 2 deaths, how quaint. Zhou Wen only mused over the idea. Since the dead man tree had entered the game, it couldn't be taken out again. Coach, are you free now? Feng Qian, who had not seen him in days, suddenly came to Zhou Wen's dorm. Zhou Wen felt a headache when he saw him, but he couldn't chase him away. All he could do was reply, I'm going to be gaming the whole day. I'm not free. Feng Qian didn't mind as he continued, Coach, I have already gained some success in the way of calmness. I hope you can test the results of my recent cultivation. Zhou Wen wore a look of puzzlement. He didn't remember when he had taught Feng Qian how to calm his mind. Yet, this fellow had actually mastered it. How do I test it? It wasn't right for Zhou Wen to say that he had taught him nothing. I only know how to use a saber. Coach, please spar with me and see if there's any room for improvement in my saber techniques. Consider it my third lesson, said Feng Qian as he transferred the 20,000 to Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen originally wanted to say that he didn't have time to spar with him, but seeing that he could collect 20,000, he swallowed the words he was about to say. Simply sparring gained him 20,000. There was no reason to refuse. He went to a sparring hall in the school with Feng Qian. Feng Qian took a practice rubber saber and said to Zhou Wen, Coach, what weapon would you like? I don't need any weapons. Zhou Wen had never practiced any weapon skills in the real world. Although he knew how to use swords and sabers, it was only limited to him slashing with brute force. There wasn't anything technical about it, so he might as well not use them. Coach, on your guard. Feng Qian didn't stand on ceremony as he slashed with his saber. Feng Qian's saber appeared as heavy as a mountain. It was so fast that one could clearly see it, but not dodge it. Even more terrifying was the biting cold saber aura that came with it. It instantly streaked across several meters and struck Zhou Wen. Feng Qian's saber was fast, but Zhou Wen wasn't slow either. He suddenly darted to the side and dodged Feng Qian's saber aura. At the same time, he used Dragon Gate Fairy skill to escape Feng Qian's sharp and powerful saber aura. Feng Qian's attacks increased in speed with each strike he delivered. Zhou Wen pushed the Dragon Gate Fairy skill to its limits, but he found it increasingly taxing. It was as though he was a tiny boat in a stormy sea that could sink at any moment. Zhou Wen tried everything, but only barely stayed out of striking distance from Feng Qian. If it was purely a competition of skills, Zhou Wen wouldn't even have the chance to counterattack. Hold on. Zhou Wen suddenly shouted to stop Feng Qian from continuing his attack. Coach, what's the matter? Feng Qian stopped and asked. You've slashed 23 times since the beginning. Even if each strike only consumes 1 primordial energy point, your primordial energy should have been depleted. How can you still use your saber aura? Zhou Wen asked Feng Qian. Furthermore, Feng Qian's saber aura was so strong that it was impossible for him to only consume a bit of it. Feng Qian said, this is because I've raised my primordial energy skill Rainbow Startling Saber Aura to rank 10. After advancing to rank 10, the primordial energy consumption is greatly reduced. In addition, my Life Providence and primordial energy art augments my saber technique. It will further reduce the expenditure and accelerate the recovery of my primordial energy. Under normal circumstances, I can continuously slash out 27 times before being completely drained of my primordial energy. Do all primordial energy skills have such effects after reaching rank 10? Zhou Wen asked in surprise. Regardless of which primordial energy skill it is, there will be a qualitative leap when it reaches rank 10. However, the effects might be different. Coach, don't you know? Feng Qian looked at Zhou Wen in puzzlement. He believed that Zhou Wen definitely knew about this. I've never practiced Rainbow Startling Saber Aura, so I didn't know of the effects when it reached rank 10. I was just asking. Zhou Wen thought of his Ashen Palm. Although it was only a mortal stage primordial energy skill, it was abnormally powerful. It dealt quite a good deal of damage to legendary creatures. Vigor Divine Fist, which was a mortal stage skill, was already unsuited for him. Astral Slash Blade and Astral Suction Palm don't have any ranks, so I'm afraid they can't be upgraded. Ashen Palm has already reached rank 10, but it's a mortal stage primordial energy skill after all. Its might can't keep up with my current needs, so I'm not sure if there's any possibility of raising it. Zhou Wen decided to use his Ashen Palm to battle Feng Qian. However, he soon discovered that Feng Qian's technique was much more skilled than his. Soon, Zhou Wen was at a disadvantage. All he could do was use Dragon Gate Fairy skill to dodge, making it difficult for him to find a chance to counterattack. Feng Qian's saber techniques were getting faster and more stable. Even without the aid of the saber auras, he still possessed extremely lethal force. Article 170 of 1597. Chapter 170 Epiphany in Battle. Typically, someone at the legendary stage had speed that maxed out at 18. Now the speed of Feng Kaiyuan's saber techniques was probably at 28, much less 18. It was getting faster and faster. If one speed exceeded the user's control limit, causing their reaction to not keep up, it would easily reveal flaws. However, Feng Kaiyuan's saber technique was as steady as a mountain. No matter how fast his saber was, he could control it freely without any signs of losing control after increasing his speed. Zhou Wen had to admit that Feng Kaiyuan was indeed very mighty. He was practically a genius born for sabers. If Zhou Wen hadn't fought desperately in game to exchange for plenty of combat experience, a legendary student with similar attributes as Zhou Wen would easily have been slain by Feng Kaiyuan. From the looks of it, combat techniques are equally important. Primordial energy skills also need to be upgraded to rank 10. Zhou Wen had already discovered his inadequacies. He had learned quite a number of primordial energy skills, but he didn't really have many useful ones. Astral Suction Palm and Astral Slash Blade were very useful, but they drained primordial energy exceedingly fast, depleting him almost instantly. Ashen Palm at the mortal stage was already somewhat unable to keep up with his pace. The legendary Golden Palm was only at rank. After some thought, other than Dragon Gate Fairy skill, Zhou Wen didn't seem to have any useful techniques. At the very least, when facing an expert like Feng Kaiyuan, ordinary primordial energy skills were useless. Zhou Wen decided not to counterattack. Instead, he switched his primordial energy art, giving himself a Dao body. He used it to rapidly recover his primordial energy, constantly using Dragon Gate Fairy skill to deal with Feng Kaiyuan. Even so, Zhou Wen still found it harder and harder. Feng Kaiyuan's saber techniques seemed to be able to increase his saber's speed without limit, and each strike was faster than the last, as though there was no limit. There was no limit to his saber speed, but Zhou Wen's movement only had one speed. He was gradually unable to dodge Feng Kaiyuan's saber. A glint flashed in Feng Kaiyuan's eyes as though he had already noticed Zhou Wen at his limit. He remained unwavering as a mountain as he slashed out with both hands. This strike seemed to split a mountain apart as it seemed indomitable. It moved as fast as thunder as it tore through the air, ignoring all its resistance. With a whine that sliced through the air, it slashed right in front of Zhou Wen. With Zhou Wen's current speed, it was impossible for him to dodge the attack. However, Zhou Wen didn't show any signs of panic. His eyes were calm as the entire world seemed to slow down before him. He tapped his toes on the ground gently as his body rode the wind and retreated. He didn't look as fast as before, but Feng Kaiyuan's saber aura remained 3 inches away from Zhou Wen's clothes. No matter how he tried, he couldn't get close. The alacrity version of raising a weighted feather? Feng Kaiyuan's eyes were filled with excitement as he brandished the saber repeatedly with both hands. The saber aura was like a raging tidal wave as it swept towards Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen felt a sense of calm. In the middle of the battle, he had also gained insight into the concept of raising a weighted feather for the Dragon Gate Fairy skill, pushing it towards rank 10. Dragon Gate Fairy skill at rank 10 not only augmented Zhou Wen with greater speed, but it also increased his ability to stay in midair. It also greatly reduced his primordial energy expenditure. There were other miraculous aspects that couldn't be explained in a few words. Just speed alone was inadequate to match Feng Kaiyuan. After all, the Dragon Gate Fairy skill had its limits, but Feng Kaiyuan's saber speed seemed to lack any. At the same realm of raising a weighted feather, Feng Kaiyuan's saber quickly caught up to Zhou Wen, who was in midair. Just as he was about to strike Zhou Wen, Feng Kaiyuan was suddenly taken aback. This was because Zhou Wen's figure suddenly became light. It was as though he was weightless. As he rapidly plummeted, it was as though he had opened a parachute, making his body feel like it was rising instead. This change in speed made Feng Kaiyuan show an error in judgment. The saber slashed the area beneath Zhou Wen's feet, failing to touch him. Zhou Wen danced in the air like a fairy, but in the next second, his speed suddenly increased. He grabbed the moment Feng Kaiyuan made the mistake and, like a bolt of lightning, struck Feng Kaiyuan's head. Feng Kaiyuan's saber had lost its force, but his momentum continued propelling his body forward. He was already unable to dodge Zhou Wen's strike. Feng Kaiyuan was decisive as he threw his saber and turned to his side to dodge Zhou Wen's strike. At the same time, he turned around and brushed past him. With a flip of his hand, he grabbed the saber in midair and slashed it at Zhou Wen. Then, using the spin he generated that boosted his waist, he slashed at Zhou Wen. In midair, Zhou Wen's figure once again became lightweight, causing Feng Kaiyuan to make a mistake in his judgment once more. He struck the empty air again. This time, Feng Kaiyuan didn't pursue him as he stared at Zhou Wen with a glint in his eyes. As expected of Coach. That was the counter version of raising a weighted feather, wasn't it? Zhou Wen nodded. Raising a weighted feather and raising a feather weight. By combining them, it's similar to a technique that mixes truths and bluffs. It's just a small trick. It sounds easy, but it's very difficult in practice. Coach, you've taught me something new again today. I know what to do next. Till next time. Feng Kaiyuan turned around and left without any hesitation. This Feng Kaiyuan sure is terrifying. If I hadn't reached rank 10 for the Dragon Gate Fairy skill, I probably would have been defeated. Ignoring the special physiques and primordial energy arts, Feng Kaiyuan is much more terrifying than John. Zhou Wen was in a good mood. He had raised the Dragon Gate Fairy skill to rank 10, greatly strengthening his combat strength. Furthermore, he had found his weakness in today's battle, giving him direction for improvement. It's important to increase my level, but my techniques and skills mustn't fall behind. After all, no matter how powerful one is, it requires powerful skills to fully deliver one's greatest strength. Zhou Wen pondered over what skills he should practice. There were too many skills in the world. There were sabers, swords, staffs, spears, whips, axes, hooks, forks, and all sorts of other weapons that had skills that matched them. It was likewise with feet, fists, fingers, palms, and legs. All of them had different skills. A person's time and energy were ultimately limited. Although Zhou Wen was talented and could master everything quickly, being adept at one type of skill was much easier to reach the sublime realm than training in everything. Furthermore, Zhou Wen still needed to take time to raise the few primordial energy skills that were more suitable for him at rank 10. He also needed to spend time gaming to have more high-level crystals drop. He really didn't have that much time to master them all. After some thought, Zhou Wen came up with a perfect plan that killed two birds with one stone. It would be a waste of time to train in weapons while raising the rank of his primordial energy skills. Therefore, Zhou Wen decided to hone his palm skills before matching it with his ashen palm. With his Dao body rapidly recovering his primordial energy, Zhou Wen felt that he could do both. Since ordinary primordial energy skills can be raised to rank 10, why can't I raise my mortal stage primordial energy skill to the legendary stage? Zhou Wen made up his mind to practice ashen palm. Article 171 of 1597.